You ever wake up one day and realize your whole life's been retroactively redefined? Not by facts, not by fate, but by a person who once kissed your forehead and said, "You're my rock." Hi, my name's Caleb Rourke, ex-Marine, amateur carpenter, certified emotional punching bag, and this is the story of how my wife weaponized the mental health system against me. Tried to brand me as unstable, and nearly got away with it, until the wrongest person in the room turned out to be the rightest guy at the worst possible time. But let's rewind. Because if you told me a year ago that the woman I built a life with a milli would someday have me dragged out of my own house in cuffs, I'd have laughed uncomfortably, but still laughed. See, I didn't marry crazy, I married strategic. Emily was the kind of person who color-coded her closet, scheduled our intimacy, and once laminated a Thanksgiving seating chart. For her side of the family, that should have been the red flag, I know. But I was in love, and apparently allergic to obvious signs of doom. We met in one of those trauma bonding workshops. She was a grief counselor, was a newly discharged vet trying to reconnect with civilian life by staring at beige walls and sipping lukewarm tea in folding chairs. I opened up about panic attacks. She opened up about her fear of abandonment. And just like that, we trauma bonded all the way to the altar. For a while, it worked. Emily had this unnerving ability to make dysfunction look like a Pinterest board. Our arguments had PowerPoints, our compromises had contracts, and I kept swallowing my instincts like bad medicine, because every time I hesitated, she'd tilt her head and say, "Caleb, do you think maybe this is one of your episodes?" Ah, yes. The magic phrase. That line, by the way, is how every manipulator disguises a gaslight as a wellness check. Over time, I stopped disagreeing, stopped questioning, stopped even reacting except with clinical calm. Like I was on trial and couldn't afford a single twitch. She didn't like that either. Are you dissociating again? Caleb, your tone is scary. Babe, you're doing that dead-eye veteran thing again. I was a walking diagnosis in her world, not a person, just a collection of concerning signs she could list in a spiral notebook and whisper about to her therapist friends. But still, I stayed. Because that's what you do when you're trained to complete missions, even when the mission is killing your spirit slowly with emotional paperwork. And then it happened. The trigger. Not a breakdown, not a violent episode, not a threat, just me saying no. She wanted to renovate the upstairs office into a creative breathing space. Translation: knock down my private reading room and install floor pillows and a salt lamp. I said, no. That's my one corner of peace. Emily blinked twice, and then softly said, I'm worried about your mental state. Not let's compromise. Not I hear you. Just a subtle insinuation that I was teetering on the edge of a psychotic break, because I wanted to keep a bookshelf. That night, I caught her on the phone in the kitchen. Low voice, tense shoulders. Yes, I've been documenting everything. His moods, the way he isolates. I'm scared, honestly. He talks to himself in the garage for hours. Newsflash, I narrate audiobooks as a side hustle. Talking to myself is my job. But in her version of the story, I was slowly unraveling. I realized something chilling that night. She wasn't prepping for a conversation, she was prepping for a case. 3 days later, on a quiet Wednesday, got a knock at the door. 2 officers, no smiles. One had that fresh out of academy, and overly proud of his sidearm energy. The other just looked bored, like he'd rather be catching a nap or a donut, and behind them, Emily, holding a tissue to her cheek. Not crying. Just posing sadness like it was a headshot. Sir, we received a wellness concern call. We're gonna need you to come with us. I blinked. Come where? To the station. You're not under arrest. Just a temporary 5,150 hold for psychological evaluation. Standard procedure. Standard procedure, huh? For what? Being a husband with boundaries. That's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't overreaction. It was a takedown, and I was the mark. Emily had filed a petition, said I'd been erratic, Withdrawn, possibly dangerous. No weapons, no threats, no actual behavior, just a feeling. And in today's system, that was enough to send a veteran to the psychiatric equivalent of the DMV, confusing, understaffed, and humiliatingly slow. I stood there in disbelief, and whispered, "Are you serious, Emily?" She looked at me with that awful blend of smug and pity, and said, "It's for your own good, Caleb. You've been slipping, lady. I've climbed mountains blindfolded, and carried bleeding men out of mortar zones. You think a messy garage and a bad mood mean I'm losing it?" They cuffed me behind my back. Not because I was violent, but because you never know. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. My dog barked so hard he threw up. And as the cruiser door slammed shut, I saw Emily turn back toward the house, smiling just a little, but enough to know. She didn't believe I was dangerous. She believed she was finally winning. So there I was, in my own home, in my own hoodie, minding my own sanity, and suddenly, I hear it knock, 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 and not the normal "oops, Amazon missed you" kind of knock. No. This was the open up, or we open it for you kind of knock. I peered through the peephole, already getting that twitchy feeling behind my eyeballs that tells me something ain't right, and what do I see? 2 officers. One, young, with that fresh out academy nervous smile, and the other, hardened middle-aged guy with a face like a burnt toaster, Mr. Rourke. The younger one called out, "We're here for a wellness check." Now, I don't know what you picture when you hear wellness check, but I always assumed it involved a friendly neighbor, maybe some soup, and a warm, "You're okay, buddy." What I didn't expect was a hand slowly inching toward a taser while they asked me if I'd been hearing voices. "Nope," I said. "Unless you count the echo of my ex-wife's gaslighting still bouncing around in here." They didn't laugh. Tough crowd. Turns out, Emily had filed a report claiming I was a danger to myself and others. Said I'd been isolated, paranoid, and unhinged. Now granted, I had been isolated because the Wi-Fi installer ghosted me for 3 weeks. I was paranoid because she was stalking my every move through shared cloud devices, and unhinged? Nah. That was the door, after she kicked it in last month and blamed me for creating a hostile energy. But did the cops want to hear all that? Nope. They just asked me to step outside to answer a few questions. And you know what I said? Sure. But if I come back and my snacks are missing, I'm filing a report on you. Still, no laugh. Anyway, I stepped out. Thought I was just going to have a weird, awkward conversation. But the second I crossed the threshold, they grabbed me, like full-on. Grab, spin, cuff, and pin. What the hell? Sir, you're being taken in for evaluation. You've been flagged as a potential threat. A threat. Me. The guy who couldn't even threaten his own Amazon Alexa without her sassing back. They loaded me into the cruiser while neighbors peeked through blinds like they were watching Cops, Suburban Edition. One lady even pulled out her phone and whispered, "He seemed so quiet." Of course, I was quiet, Barbara. I was trying to survive on microwaved oatmeal and trauma therapy. I spent the entire ride to the psychiatric unit doing what any rational person would do, calculating every last thing I had ever said out loud in my own house. Had I muttered something sarcastic to the blender? Did I once yell, "I'll end it all," because I dropped lasagna on the floor? Probably, but none of it explained why my entire life was now being rewritten by one woman who had mastered the dark art of courtroom theater and weaponized victimhood. And somewhere in the back of my head, a little voice whispered, "She's framing you, and she's going to get away with it." So, there I was, sitting in what felt like a stainless steel box designed by a sadist with an obsession for fluorescent lights. The kind of room where the walls stare back, judging every second you spend inside. Detective Gerald Platt finally showed up, looking like he had personally wrestled a grizzly bear that morning and lost. He plopped a manila folder on the table with the kind of casual cruelty usually reserved for dropping a mic. "Your wife says you threatened her," he said, voice low and grim, "that you've been unstable and unhinged, that you had a breakdown last year and never got help." I blinked. Dude, I had the flu last December, I said, hoping for some human empathy. He didn't laugh. Not even a snicker. Instead, he slid across the table a screenshot of a text message. My name at the top, and this gem. If you leave me, I swear I'll ruin you, except, it wasn't from me. I never sent that. I stared at the screen, realizing this was her masterpiece, a forged message on a platform I never used. .signalvault, .encrypted, .unhack, ABL, at least, that's what I thought. Turns out, she had done her homework, but not good enough. I leaned back, trying to keep my voice calm. Detective Platt, I want my lawyer. That bought me time. But Emily wasn't done, no. She had saved her best evidence for last, hours later. They rolled in an audio recording that sounded like it was ripped straight out of a soap opera. Emily and her attorney buddied out how they'd frame me, whispering about military-style videos they found on my laptop. About me researching violent methods. Spoiler alert, the closest I get to violence is yelling at the TV during commercials. I sat there, letting the lies wash over me like an endless wave. They didn't care about truth, they just had fear. Fear sells, fear wins. Here's where the plot thickens. Weeks before the arrest, after I'd discovered the forged transfer and Darren's shady past, I'd activated DeepShielder security protocol that records everything on my devices. Calls, texts, conversations, even the ambient audio in my house, all encrypted and uploaded to a server no one but me can access. So yeah, I had the real recordings, and I was ready. After hours in the interrogation room, I made a single call to police chief, Alan Merritt. This guy had hired me twice before for security consulting. We had mutual respect, he hated lies. I left a voicemail. You're being used, call me back within 10, or everything burns. 7 minutes later, in walked Merritt, looking like he'd just swallowed a grenade. Right behind him, Special Agent Maya Ellis from the FBI Cyber Division. Suddenly, the room flipped. Detective Platt started to protest. Chief, this guy's under Merritt, cut him off. Not another word. Uncuff him, now. My wrists finally free. I stood and glanced toward Emily, who was conveniently waiting for a follow-up statement. Sipping coffee and dabbing fake tears. She saw me walk by. And for the first time, she looked scared. I followed Chief Merritt and Special Agent Ellis down a hallway that suddenly felt like a red carpet, to justice, or at least a better version of it. We stepped into a secure briefing room, and the door clicked shut behind us. Like the final curtain on Emily's little drama, Merritt turned to me, eyes sharp. Caleb, what the hell is going on? I slid a small black USB drive across the table. Everything you need is here. Recordings, timelines, metadata, the whole mess, all securely logged and untouchable. Agent Ellis wasted no time. She plugged the drive into her laptop and started scrolling through folders. Labeled like a spy movie, Emily_phone_calls_unedited, Darren K_fake credentials. Forgery_timestamps_transfer docs. Then, a video started playing on the screen. There, they were, and Darren, giggling in my kitchen like co-conspirators in the world's worst heist. Emily. With this sickeningly sweet smile, once he's arrested, we spin the mental health story. No judge will question it. He works with high-risk scenarios. It's foolproof. Darren with a smirk. If he resists, we play the trauma card. He'll break. It always works. I almost laughed, except the only thing funny about this was how far she'd fallen. Agent Ellis turned to Merritt and said, "We need to detain both of them. Now." Merritt looked pale. Jesus. I vouched for her. I nodded, feeling the weight of betrayal settle in my chest. Minutes later, Merritt stormed into the holding room, where Emily was lounging like she was about to receive a medal. Instead, she got handcuffs. "What are you doing?" she gasped. "You're under arrest," Merritt said flatly. "For falsifying evidence, obstruction, and conspiracy to defraud a federal consultant." Her face drained of color faster than you can say, "I'm busted." You're making a mistake. Caleb's dangerous. He's been planning. What? Agent Ellis appeared behind Merritt with a wicked grin. The vacation you booked with Darren after the arrest. The new luggage. The celebratory wine. Yeah, we've got that too. Emily froze. The empire she built on lies was crumbling. But the story doesn't end with a couple of cuffs. Oh no. This was just the opening act. Turns out, Darren Kessler, the so-called attorney, was part of a much bigger operation. A ring specializing in weaponizing abuse claims, fabricating psychiatric reports, and laundering assets through well-timed court orders. Emily wasn't the mastermind. She was their latest inside player. They'd recruited her 2 years ago at one of her charity galas, pitching the gig as a way to help victims, then twisting empathy into a weapon. She was promised a 7-figure payday for pushing me into a psychiatric hold and opening my accounts via power of attorney. If I fought back, they'd claim I'd snapped. That trauma justified taking everything. The fallout was brutal. Emily's name was splashed across headlines. Charity icon arrested in fraud ring. Mental health advocate caught faking abuse. Military consultant nearly institutionalized by wife. But here's the thing, I didn't celebrate. Because this wasn't just my battle. It was bigger. Weeks later, I was called to testify before a grand jury. The courtroom was colder than the Siberian tundra. Or maybe that was just the memories chilling my bones. The prosecution laid it all bare. Emails, calls, voice memos, and bank transfers. Then, they played a recording of Emily's voice sweet as honey. Sharp as a blade. She's so stable. It's annoying, she whispered on tape. But if I tweak a few things, whisper to the right people, twist his PTSD evil, Darren says it'll tip the scales. It's foolproof. The courtroom was silent. Then, one juror whispered, "Monster, not about me, about her." Emily pled guilty. Darren tried to flee but was caught with 2 passports, $90,000 in crypto, and a forged psychiatric warrant, with my name still on it, 20 years minimum. Justice. But the best part? The letters. Hundreds of letters from people I didn't even know, and women crushed by lies like mine. Some never recovered, some fought back. I chose to fight back. I started Silent Sigala, legal aid group to help those falsely accused, the weaponized victims of lies and manipulation. Every win, a victory not just for me, but for anyone who's been silenced. The last time I saw Emily was in court. She looked older, not by years, but by the weight of consequences. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. I didn't stop. She'd said enough. If you're watching and thinking, could this happen to me? Yes, but don't panic. Document, hold your ground, let truth have its moment. Because lies might be loud, but the truth, it always has better timing. So here we are at the end of this nightmare turn triumph. You might be wondering, what now? What did Caleb learn? Well, buckle up, because the truth is rarely neat and tidy. First off, don't ever underestimate the power of being your own best detective. When the people closest to you betray your trust, the natural reaction is shock, confusion, sometimes even denial. I won't lie, wanted to believe Emily was different, better, but I learned that charm can be a weapon, and love isn't always what it seems on the surface. Lesson 2. Documentation is your best friend. Keep records, save messages, record calls if you can. When your story is twisted and weaponized, facts are your shield. You might think, I'm not a spy or a lawyer, this is too much. But trust me, taking a few minutes to protect yourself can save you from years of hell. Lesson 3. Know your support system and build one if you don't have it. I was lucky, my job gave me tools and contacts. But more than that, I had allies who believed in the truth. Whether it's a friend, a lawyer, or a mentor, find people who see you and stand with you. You don't have to fight alone. And finally, the best revenge isn't getting back or shouting the loudest. It's quietly rebuilding. Proving with your actions that you're stronger than the lies thrown your way. Launched Silent Signal. Not just for me, but for all of us who've been silenced. It's about turning pain into power. I still get the occasional panic attack. I'm not going to pretend this trauma just vanished, like a bad dream. But I know where those feelings come from now, and that knowledge has made me stronger. The truth doesn't just set you free, it arms you to fight for your peace. Emily's empire fell, mine rose, and the last time I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw a man who survived hell, kept his soul intact, and came out ready to help others do the same. So if you're watching this feeling lost, betrayed, or alone, remember, you are enough, your voice matters, and no matter how loud the lies get, the truth has a way of breaking through. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If you want more real-life battles, unexpected twists, and maybe a little dark humor to lighten the load, subscribe and join the community. Because stories like mine, they're not just entertainment, they're a lifeline. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember, sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is keep telling your story. Asterisk.